This is part 2 building of the Miata, and I know it might skip a little bit, but this motor is officially into the car. But that's not all that is getting announced. This is amazing that this is running, but I'm actually going to be competing head-to-head against my twin. So he has a Miata, and thanks to you guys supporting this channel, we officially are going to announce something. We each are going to have $10,000, and we're going to do a $20,000 total Touge build challenge. What can look the most stylish, but also be the best performing. Now, we're gonna do this in 3 different categories where we're also gonna have 3 different judges. The average of those scores on the date October 1st of next year. No matter where the cars are at that point, they're gonna compete, and whoever has the best build wins. A lot of these videos we already make for YouTube, we figured we might as well just do them with a little bit of motivation. Also a budget, because a lot of people that are going into their builds, they don't have endless YouTube budgets, and I want to be real, I want to do something that any of you guys could build too. Like throwing on a $5,000 kit across a year, if you're saving and being smart with it, is very doable. This is the motor mount bolt right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unbolt the motor of my 1.6, and then for the 1.8, I got these brand new, super fancy looking plates, be able to adapt the 1.8 brand new motor bushings. This is also going to make the car have a lot less vibrations from the motor. I think it's going to be super cool, and it's a really nice rad piece. That back there is the cam angle sensor, and I just realized that this clip that I'm holding in my hand, the extender, is actually what's going to be able to make us be able to use this onto the 1.8 liter, and I need to place it here, aka the wiring harness allows this little bit of an extension. This piece is super rad and super dope. Got it on Flying Miata as well, a part of the kit. I realized though that even though I just mounted up my coil pack and everything else on the valve cover and everything's all painted, I need to undo all of this to be able to put the cam angle sensor right here. That's frustrating, but I'll undo it and get it ready. I have a water pump down here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that off, and it looks like it should be the same part for this one as it is for the one over here. It looks nearly identical, with maybe the really only major difference is how that is upheld right there. For my own sanity and sake of mind, also based on a little bit deterioration I see on it, I'm gonna take this one off and install this old one, which had significantly less miles on it, and I'll put that one on here instead, just to make sure I have as many newer and nice parts as I can on this motor. I have all my things labeled, but one of them is going to be coil pack. The other one is, what is this called? Back of the motor ground, or back of the motor that goes to the exhaust. This one is the cam sensor, and the cam sensor is going to have this extension plug, in which I'm going to plug in real quick. But it comes from Flying Miata, has this braided cable. You're gonna slide this in on this end, make sure it's 100% pushed in, and then this will be your cam position sensor that's gonna mount over to the other side of the motor, because now it'll have enough reach to be able to reach over there. Now, what I am gonna do is I'm gonna take off this off the top of the motor, and then take off my valve cover and do it once again, where I take it off and I put it back there. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Also, shout out to one of you guys, I'll put your comment up here, but this grommet is supposed to be on the back of that plate, not a washer. So instead, I'm gonna take off that washer and put on this. Thank you for ever commented that. Genuinely, deeply appreciate it. I threw down just a little bit more paint around here, and then this is the new cam position sensor that is attached. This was a lot of work, but I got it done. Mounted up back the exhaust. During this, I am analyzing and looking at the barb, and the fuel pressure regulator has a barb and a top hat, and on the end of the new fuel rail, I actually have to switch the fuel pressure regulator upside down to where the top hat is now facing down, because on the new system, this system, there's only one inlet and no returns, and on the old system of the 1.6, there is a return line. So I'm going to have to, instead of that top hat, replace it with the barbed one, so that we actually have a return line going back into the car, so it works with a 1.6 fueling system. Okay, so this is the fuel line, and now supposedly the ejectors will clip in, and the one thing that you might notice is there's just one inlet for fuel. And you won't believe it, I just checked it, and sure enough, the clips work. So that was actually pretty easy. Now what I'm gonna do is swap out that barb, and then with this line, I'm gonna unmount the other one and then make sure that they're both labeled for which one needs to be on which, either the barb or the hose. Now, I've been doing a lot of work and I took off the power steering. I put on this little guy for the coolant. I replaced the water temp entire system, the sensor inside, as well as this little bracket, which is supposed to go and hold this little thing up, but instead I moved it over there. I am just slowly moving everything over here, and it's starting to look, it probably looks like visually the same, but it's starting to actually get put together again. I actually put in bolts this time into all the different spots. Engine mount, which I just bought, brand new engine mount, a 1.8, pretty tight bushing. Really like that one. I gotta put one on this side still, which I've yet to do. I'm gonna be doing that soon. I wiped up the upper control arm. Also, I just realized there is steel braided line brakes for the Miata, which is pretty sick. I didn't even know. But up over here is the engine mount. So I am gonna loosen those up and I'm gonna start unbolting the back of the engine to the transmission. And then I think what I'm gonna try to do today is I'm gonna set down this motor again. I'm going to pick up this one, and I think I'm going to have this one out so I can start doing the coolant and the water temp that's in the back of the motor. I got to swap over those parts over onto this engine, and there's really only one way to do it, which is out of the car. So that's what I'm going to do next. It's a big undertaking, so I'm just going to put you on a time lapse and do the best I can. Now, I'm removing this little guy, and I realized something, but I need your guys' opinion. My cams say HKS. So is that stock or is this aftermarket? I can't tell. It looks really clean on the inside. I want to investigate and see if maybe there was aftermarket parts done to this motor. Okay, so I did research and 100% for certain, this is an aftermarket camshaft. It has HKS, which means that this is a 264 and a 256 camshaft. So both of these are slightly more aggressive on both sides. They recommend that you do a smaller one towards the exhaust side and a more aggressive one on this side, which also explains to why I felt like this engine was very peppy in comparison. I was unaware of the fact that there was changes to the engine, but that is definitely HKS. This is 256 camshaft, and then there on the other side, I'm sure we'll say, this engine's gonna sit here for a second as I go to remove my old motor. I have everything disconnected at this point. I do need to remove a couple more bolts on the back of the motor itself. And then I'm ready to take this thing out. I'm gonna take this thing out and just drop it right over there the best I can. And then I can actually start making sure I have all the rest of the components over and start setting this one in. This is the old motor, which we've taken off. I put back on the valve cover temporarily. This is the HKS, which has the additional new cams and everything else, and I realized the fuel injectors are also aftermarket. That engine was definitely built. From the last time you've seen this, I have painted that red, just a little accent. I finished up the brakes, and then I put on the flywheel onto the back of our new motor, and I left all the bolts in the exact order which I took them off. All I need to do from here, both engine mounts are done. All I need to do from here is figure out the exhaust distance. So I need to take off that starter, put it on that motor, and then what I need to do on that right-hand side, see how high up the exhaust is to me? That is further up than that transmission. Now, if we look at this, the transmission is supposed to be there, and this is already further past. So I think I'm gonna need to do is I need to cut back that exhaust pretty much to where that flange is back there, and then mount this tab on that, because this has some give and some room and I can move it around a little bit, but I want to make sure that it's actually the right height and distance so I can put on this exhaust.